All right, we'll get started. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great delight and pleasure to have our current edition of the Pioneer Series, featuring our own Professor Robert Hellwarth. Bob is a professor of electrical engineering and of physics and astronomy. So the Pioneer Series, for those who are not familiar with, is something that we started in our department, and it's hosted by Lynch Institute. Joining me, I'm Sri Narayanan, or Hussein Shini, he's there, my colleague, and Bhaskar Krishmachari, to welcome you all to this event. So the idea of this event is to feature our illustrious colleagues who've kind of built this department, and brought much glory to it, and continue to do so. So what we wanted to do through the series is to both learn from them, at least a slice of the trajectory that they've taken, but also have an opportunity to have a little conversation with them, and to ask questions about how they got what they hear, what takes them, and archive this for the department to capture part of its history. So two purposes. One, technical talk. We'll start with Bob's technical talk. Already he's thrown a curveball. He's going to use a whiteboard today instead of that PowerPoint or what are keynote slides that we're all so slave to. So Bob, as you know, it's he's accomplished much as a scholar, and here at USC, he's been here for 45 years. He's a member of the National Academy of Sciences and of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. He's won many awards from IEEE and other organizations, too long to count. And to many areas in physics and its translation to electrical engineering applications. So he'll probably share some of those with us today. After his presentation, Professor Jack Feinberg has kindly agreed to be the interviewer today, and we don't know what he's going to ask Bob about, but we're going to record it and post it right away, so it's going to be fun. So thank you so much for doing this. Jack is illustrious colleague from physics and astronomy department, and after that, we'll have a reception, and we'll have a plaque, which for each of our pioneers, we've we kind of try to commemorate this occasion with a plaque on our wall of pioneers, we call our own colleagues. And so we'll have a reception, hang out, and celebrate this our colleague. So thank you again for coming, and Bob, the stage is yours.
Oh, here we go. When I started thinking about this, I just wanted to stroll down memory lane. Actually, there was, and I started looking at old papers that I hadn't remembered and things like that. And basically, as Stroll gave a few stories of the most influential people that I knew. When I got out of, in graduate school, there's I started graduate school in Oxford. And there was under a professor who was one of the co-inventors of the microwave tubes that they used, a big key in the wartime British radar establishment, Brevis Bleeny. And he wrote a wonderful book about electricity and magnetism, and it's Brevis and Betty Bleeny. Betty had been one of his graduate students, and she was really, and if it's about the clearest book I have ever read on this subject. Anyhow, Brevis was very interested in the fact that there were lots of isotopes floating around now that were not in the books and were not found in nature after the war, things like that. And he suggested he got a new postdoc named Woodgate and me, and he'd come from, I don't know where he'd come from, London or something. And we were started with a bare floor, and we were supposed to build the apparatus to look at some strange isotope that we could find. He had already decided in looking around that the simplest isotopes that came out of the pile, which was within 10 miles of the lab, and we could go back and forth, was radioactive silver 222. And fine, so it had some very simple chemistry. When it came out of the pile, I had to do the chemistry and separate it from all the other radioactive junk in the English in those days. And once with the fan in the chemical separation area went bad and blew a bunch of the radioactive liquid out into the storage area in the back, and they put a little tape around the area and gave me a bucket and said, "Nobody go in here until Hellwarth's cleaned it out." and I could take, and the Geiger counter would show that was pretty clean again. So I scrubbed away all the mess till the Geiger counter looked clean again. It's interesting, one of the professors, no, that's too much. The method of choice at that time would be the atomic beam magnetic resonance method, which had been invented by our friend at MIT. Oh my God. It was already the easiest way to just isolate a nucleus and measure the spin and the coupling strength of the spin to the electronic cloud. Norman Ramsey's method. The postdoc just come out of the Navy, and he had connections where we could get a really quiet DC current source for a battery. We needed quiet, because he borrowed a whole bunch of submarine batteries, and we had them brought over from the Navy, and had to only charge them up occasionally. They're very little noise and very steady current. We made atomic beams of various things and went to Harwell and got this radioactive, I don't know what I forget now what Harwell had, what I had to separate the silver from, a whole bunch of junk anyway, doesn't matter. Turned out this was then the first time that a nucleus not existing in nature had ever had the strength of the coupling between the nucleus and the electrons measured, and the spin of the nucleus. Although the spin was pretty obvious from the shell model what the spin of the silver was supposed to be, but the coupling constant, which they call the hyperfine structure, it's the splitting of the ground state, because The nucleus is coupled to the electrons. And this would never, so many ups and downs. We had a lot of fun. This guy, my friend Woodgate, who was working with me, his wife always complained. In fact, my present wife is taking Woodgate's wife to a play tonight in England, and she always complained that I saw a lot more of him than his family did, a lot more. But we had a lot of fun. The lifetime of this nucleus was about a week, so we had a week to make the beam, deposit parts of the beam on various cold traps, take them to the counting machinery and go through the thing, and then I would guess, it was like hunting for a needle in a haystack. I mean, this coupling constant was somewhere near a gigahertz, and we had some idea from the magnetic behavior roughly where it might be, and so we tuned an old signal core oscillator through the whole range of frequencies, and the hope of actually seeing this exact resonance was small. We could see, however, the effect of a magnetic field on the path of the atoms. And here's where there was great luck. I don't think I wouldn't have gotten this, I wouldn't have finished my thesis. In fact, at Oxford where I was not a doctoral student. I was a probationer B.Lit. They didn't actually believe much in PhDs. It was a German invention. They still don't. In fact, I think most of the professors, even in physics now, don't have PhDs. I mean, Dirac never had a PhD, and none of these guys. Blindy didn't have a PhD. I don't think his wife, no, but in fact, I would say, just to keep up with the world, in the last few years, the Clarendon Laboratory at Oxford has allowed their workers to call themselves professor. They were not even allowed to claim they were professors when they went to meetings and things, let alone doctors. And then there was a big brouhaha because it used to be each department had one professor. I guess that was and now they're just a dime a dozen. They're just all over the place. So none of the people I worked with were professors, and very few were doctors. In looking for this needle in the haystack, I think we exhausted our money. We had, in the end, 5 donations from the Harwell pile, I guess they call it. And we'd gone through the first 4, and we had not found any resonance. And there was this last one. I think Harwell either upped the price or they decided this particular, they didn't win anyhow. This was the last chance. That's okay, because most of the people who, I had a 3-year fellowship, and most of the people there planned to go back to Stanford or MIT anyway and just had a good time. I hadn't really hoped to finish it in those 3 years, and Bliney said after the first year, I hope we see a bit more of you in this coming year, because there's too much else to do. But anyhow, the college, at my final college what do they call it, graduation dance. They had some name for it, and the college was nearby. And instead of going to the farewell graduation dance, I kept, on that last sample, I kept going up on this roof with the Geiger counters, and I saw the resonance. It was just a miracle. And one of the reasons, there were, I would say, under 100 silver atoms had landed, and these silver atoms decaying were just enough to show that the resonance had to be there. And one of the reasons I made it convincing was I invented a special coupler called the Hellwarth hairpin, which still sits in the lab there in Oxford, so that the radio field that it was interacting with, instead of just interacting with a up and down field, it went through, each atom saw two fields, one with 90 degrees out of phase with the other field, and this meant that there would be a double hump in the resonance curve, and it was easy to generate false signals and things, and when there's just one thing going up and down, you go from 0 to 3 to 4 counts to 0 counts, but there's this beautiful double hump right where it should be, and that convinced them. So I left there with a PhD, much to my surprise, and I went to Caltech, where I had a postdoc, and atomic beams were very fashionable I guess everywhere right then, because the maser was an atomic beam. It was the only known stimulated emission device at the time. That was the year or so before the laser was invented. There was the ammonia beam maser, in fact, was well, first off, the first ammonia beam resonance was seen by my professor Bleedy. He was the first ever to observe a microwave resonance in these molecules, and he was very pleased with all this. And so I knew a little bit about this. Towns had built this beam maser, oscillated at 23 gigahertz, very near one wave number. And so when I got to Caltech, they were looking for physics, weekly physics seminars, and they said, well, you tell us about the maser. I knew I had followed it because I was working with the atomic beam, so I gave my first lecture at Caltech about the maser, and afterwards, Feynman came up to me and he said, I spent last year being a chemist. He said, I would really like to get an engineering student and do engineering, and we could work on this maser thing. I showed them in the seminar what a mess the Schrodinger's equation was to solve it and find out the line width of the final oscillation line and how it was pulled by the being not on the cavity frequency and all of this stuff. And there was unreadable the papers about the theory of the maser at that point there, and so Feynman got Frank Vernon, an electrical engineering student, to volunteer. By the way, he had some graduate student from every department in the university before he quit. This was quite in keeping with his general interests, and I started showing him what a mess it was to figure how this, as the atoms, the molecules floated through at different velocities and with the different cavity line field shapes and things. the difficulty in calculating that. And, oh, he said, it's simple. I can't remember. And he had, well, so a very simple way, it must have been all Feynman's. So my first, let's see, I published 3 papers about the strange isotopes. But the first paper in America was with Feynman and the engineering student called Geometrical Representation of Schrodinger's Equation for Solving Maser Problems. And in 2 pages, we solved all the problems that had been solved in 20 before, and wrote a little paper, and it is now my most referenced paper that I ever wrote or participated in. Vernon went on to be a boss at Aerospace Corporation. Yeah, I don't know what happened to him in the end, Frank. Anybody know Frank? Oh, I'd love to find him again. Anyhow, and it was fun. We had a lot of fun with that. By the time my year ran out, I was at Hughes Aircraft Company next, and there, guess came about the same time to the Hughes Research Labs, which started down in Culver City and then moved out to Malibu later, Ted Mayman, and in that would have been in the May of 1960 then, next year or so, when Ted went out in the hall and he said, hey, you guys, you want to see some funny spot? It's really, I was 100 feet away from the first laser. Now, I only want to emphasize that how much luck has to do in being, in this business. I mean, how lucky can you get? By the end of that year, I thought of a way to get higher pulse powers and thought of Q switching, and I was proud because when I proposed that later, it was December of '60 in Berkeley after Ted's laser had been around, and Ted gives a wonderful account of all the politics and stuff in a book that he wrote. Have you seen, called The Laser Odyssey? It was just wild. I can't tell you, of course, all the good papers were refused immediately because they didn't come from Bell Labs mostly. Nobody could believe that anything could happen outside of Bell Labs in those days. So Ted's paper was refused. My paper was refused. Other guys that were all running around with this business. It's fun to read his book. I haven't read it for quite a while, but to know the life of a successful engineering physicist can be a rocky one. Read how Ted lived through it. And I was pleased that at this meeting where I proposed this, everybody said, "You're crazy, it can't be, Now, nobody believed me. I said you could easily get 20 megawatts out of the Ruby laser that Ted had, or even a gigawatt if you built it a little bigger and stuff. And nobody believed me, except one Russian who was always a friend, named Bazov, and he was always very, very good to me, and I visited him many times in Russia after that. And to get a Q switch, you needed a diaphragm that opened very fast. What do you call it? Like a camera diaphragm that would open in a microsecond, and that's obviously not hard to do if you really set out to do it with electro-optic effects and things. And he went home and tried it, and he got a tiny effect. So Basso was the first to publish this gain in power was he only was getting a factor of 10 or something. I actually persuaded the aircraft company to file for a patent in this, and I found out later, which they did, that we spent a lot of time at the patent office and so forth. And so when I came to USC and I bought my own first Q-switched laser, the company told me that $2,000 of the price had to go to pay Hughes for my patent. So it didn't do much for me. I think I got the proverbial watch at Christmas time or something. We had a wonderful time at Hughes. You can imagine, very lively days. Ted was soon gone and starting his own company, and all kinds of things were going on. So this was probably one of my, let's see, only the 3 decent patents that I ever got. This was one, and somebody at Hughes told me that by the time Hughes cleverly put off the starting date for the patent. They kept all this legal stuff going, because they figured the longer they waited, that the 17 years would be the bigger payoff, and they were right. That was good. So they claimed in the end they made a little rangefinder out of the Q-switch laser that a soldier could carry in his pocket, and you put them on rifles and things. And he said they sold as many, I think, to the Russians as they did to the Americans. So they had a good time with that. Luckily at that point, I wrote a little paper with a friend at Stanford, John Emmett, you probably don't know, but he later became the head of the Lawrence Livermore Laboratory, and I helped persuade him to start the laser fusion business there, which they finally did after a lot of hemming and hawing. And I guess they just finally they had break even last year. The big laser, they figured actually with Mayman's data, and my data, that it would take them only, like 5 years to make fusion with a hot laser spot. And I never looked through all of that theory. I don't know who did, but it was much harder than they thought. The same with the magnetic fusion. They thought it would take them 5 years to make magnetic containment work for fusion, and we're still waiting. So it's kind of a lesson in technology transfer lesson. Yes, so I learned the basic technology transfer lesson. Don't claim it'll work. Keep insisting it won't work, and then they get more interested. And then when it doesn't work, they don't blame you at all. It's really worth it.
Managing expectations.
But I kept some of my contacts at Caltech going for when we got I wrote a paper with Feynman and physics graduate students about a good calculation of the mobility of what was called a polaron, a heavily coupled an electron with a huge cloud of lattice distortion around it, which couldn't be calculated by the usual perturbation theory and weak coupling, and we had a lot of fun with that. And that paper's not even in Engineering Village too. All my best papers are not even in the. I was gonna, who do you write to EV2 to ask them to put one of your papers in their list? Do you use EV2? Do you know anything else? There's nothing that competes, is there?
Was it before the archive before the?
Well, you look up somebody's name, you see everything they published.
Right, no, I use it all the time. The question is, was your paper not in one of the journals that they?
Oh, no, it was in a big journal. No, they were all,
Oh, I
there's
just
Physical
guess.
Review or something.
I'll go out on the street with you.
Actually, I had an impression that 20 years ago it was in their list, and they decided that papers older than a certain date could be hacked. I think that's what happened. The paper was too old. So. But I needed something from that paper. It was last month, and I was going crazy because I couldn't find it. Anyhow, the Hughes was a great place still in those days, and we I remember I got hold of a guy with some good money to buy several ruby lasers, named McClung, and McClung, Fred, and I then started trying to play games with nonlinear optics of various sorts. I don't know why I'm thinking. I said there were, well, the stimulated emission, there must be, I knew there was also optical, not optical, but there were parametric oscillators. There were other kinds of ways to use atoms to make oscillators, and I proposed doing it with Raman scattering in a paper, which had to fight to get published. Stimulated Raman scattering. I was the only author, and it was, it was rejected in '63, finally published a little bit later. And then we could see it. Again, it was very easy to see if you just had the right material with strong Raman scattering. And the nice thing was Professor Raman saw it, and he believed it, and he wrote very nice letters and wanted me to write another special paper for him in his journal. So I'm sure he liked the name I gave to it, stimulated Raman scattering, which stuck anyway. It's still the only name it's known by. So, for instance, Bill Wagner, who was briefly, wasn't he? He was chairman of physics and was briefly associate or the dean of sciences there. He was one of my consultants at the Hughes laboratories, and one of the big deals about the maser and the laser was that they were supposed to be such low noise amplifiers. So there was the question is, can you get an amplifier with any lower noise than you can make with a maser? And it's easy to cool masers, but the cooling doesn't really help them much. It's the frequency of the maser is its noise temperature. So if the hydrogen maser, which controls all of our GPS communications and stuff, is a very good example of a maser amplifier doing some kind of work. So Wagner and I did the theory of the quantum noise of a parametric oscillator. There was some hope that it could make an amplifier with lower noise, and we found the quantum limit on its noise was exactly the same as the maser and the laser, and nobody else has pursued other amplifiers. I always said, but we couldn't prove that okay, maybe there's another kind of amplifier that has lower noise I've never seen anybody find one yet. But I think it's a fundamental question. It's still valid. What kind of amplifier has the lowest possible noise figure at a given operating condition or temperature? I went to Illinois while I was at Hughes, where I became a postdoc of a guy named Gordon Bain there, who did a lot of field theory stuff, and I got a corner of his office, and we had a great deal of fun. He never saw his wife either. And we wrote an article which I claim has never been superseded. The basic nonlinear effects in charged plasmas. There were 4 or 5 articles which had been written which were clearly wrong when we looked at them, and the field really needed a little bit of his kind of high class. He was a student of Schwinger's or something, you know. Anyhow, I'm very proud of that article with Gordon, which as I say, if there's anybody wants to know about nonlinear effects in charged plasmas, I would recommend that. It wasn't long after that, I guess it was 5 years, that we did an awful lot of measurements and had a lot of fun. And Hughes Labs, I went away to teach for a year in Oxford again. I got a chance to teach there, and Wagner by this time had come to USC, and he said, well, what the hell, if you're going away for a year, why don't you come back in USC? And that's when I joined, and Caprillion was in on the deal and joined USC. That was in '71, I guess. And one of the first things I did when I got here, I got the help of a very nice postdoc. Anyhow, we invent. That was my next good patent was a nonlinear optical microscope where we used second harmonic generation to see all the boundary, all what was going in polycrystalline material. You could see all of the cracks and boundaries and bubbles and stuff like that. It was I think that was in, and we patented that. That's one of the second of my 3 patents. And I think they're starting to use nonlinear optical microscopes for living tissue nowadays, aren't they? I don't know. Yeah, great. But my patents run out, right? I can charge it, you know. That was more than 17 years ago. What the hell, that was a long time ago. Couple of years, let's see. read some paper by some Russians about getting time reverse images from stimulated backscattering, brilliant scattering. That there had been a paper or two, and I thought, I always said it had come more concentrated more on non-resonant nonlinearities, just like electro-optic effect and stuff. And I wrote a paper called Generation of Time-Reversed Wavefronts by Nonlinear Refraction. In those days, I mean, it was nice. I was working in the library, but you think of things while you're shading, and everybody should, and it had nothing to do with what I was doing at the lab at that moment at all. Yeah, but write it up, and what the hell? I think that was rejected also, so that I can see why the young physicists are loath to write up what they were thinking about while they were shaving. But anyhow, this paper myself, and I filed for a patent and got a good patent, which is run out. And somebody, I got a little notice from the Optical Society that this paper, which a couple of years ago, I had no idea, this paper was one of the 50 most cited papers since the birth of the Optical Society journals in the late 1800s or 1900s. So I'm very pleased that they had 50. They had found the 50 most cited papers since their journals started, and I was sort of down near the last. This came to be involved with the photorefractivity, and with Jack here, we got all of the Hughes Laboratory made because everybody was trying to make one of these time reversal things that not only reversed it, but it came back stronger than it went in and amplified it at the same time. And Jack, with his, I think his help, we made such a mirror as what do they call those mirrors now? Where we had a soup spoon here and the
phase conjugating.
And the mirror down here, and as we moved the soup spoon, the gain of the mirror was enough to make it laze. Wherever we put the soup spoon, it would find it and get reflected back from the spoon and form a laser with its gain. Nobody ever made a nickel off of that, did they? No. So much for technology transfer. We did a lot of optical image processing, and tried optical memories, and DARPA was pouring a lot of money into optical memories, and we were smart enough to see that this is one of those never be worth anything, that the electronic memories were improving so fast there was no way to keep up with them. That was as simple as that. So you had theory, I could make a holographic memory that was better than IBM's Pocket, but by the time I made it, their memory was 10 times better already. So that was fun for a couple of years. But I was glad to predict that they were wasting their money. I helped a guy at MIT fix a fiber optic gyroscope so that it was actually useful for certain applications. Laser gyros, you get a laser beam going this way at the same time and a laser beam going that way, and when you turn the whole laser, the bead note stays still while you turn the laser, and it's easy then to see how many degrees you turn the laser. And I think most commercial aircraft still carry a backup laser gyro in case all the other things fail. They're cheap and lightweight, and even at this point with all the GPS system, I guess everybody's still worried that the GPS could shut down one day. And anyhow, so but the ones that the airplanes carry is not our fiber version, but somewhere else in the Army they use those. So the trouble with the fiber gyroscope was that there was too much non-interaction in the glass of the fiber to be dealt with, at least the way they were doing it, to give an accurate result. I'm just wondering. That's too long. I was only supposed to go 45 minutes. There's been so many other little memory stuff. I worked for a while on guide stars for optical telescopes so that you could cancel out the noise of the atmosphere in the image of stars and all of that. But I've just, see, I told you, he says, what are you going to talk about for all that time? I said, oh, are you kidding? I said, oh, you get me talking, I can talk for 4 hours about it. So I'm stopped there, and I'd love to have questions. One of the things was clear is luck is really clear. I mean, how lucky can you get to you be 100 feet from the first laser, find a guy, see the first man-made isotope hyperfriend structure just because your thesis advisor is smart enough to tell you to try and do it. Get Feynman interested in major problems, and I remember when I first taught here, he said he loved teaching. I said, well, come teach my class sometime. It was mostly in physics. He said, yes, I'd be happy to teach your class under one condition, and he said, nobody knows I'm coming, and no professors are allowed in the audience. So every class I taught, every semester one was taught by Feynman with no professors in attendance. Lucky, as he would have stormed out if there had been one. I mean, he was very serious about this. Luck. Yes, you need a lot of luck, but I will say, I always loved what I was doing. I can't recommend anybody go into this business if they would rather go to a movie than work on a paper. It's something I've always loved. I mean, some people say, well, I might have been a doctor or something. I mean, from the time I was 5 years old, my father had a workshop, and he taught me, he was an engineer. And, there was never any question at any point what I would be doing, and I loved to do it from day one, and got lucky. Thank you. So,